in the late days of autumn, when the sun was no more than a faint streak of light, filtering through the gray clouds over the Swedish sky, a middle-aged woman could often be seen walking slowly through the ancient forest that led to the forbidden land behind Lake Torsjö. Her name was Elise, a former paleobiology researcher, once teaching at Uppsala University, who had given up everything after a strange incident labeled her a delusional figure in academic circles. Elise was never superstitious, nor did she believe in mystical theories, until the fateful day she discovered an ancient carved stone beneath the frozen layers of a long-forgotten cave. What could drive someone once nominated for a Nobel Prize in biology to abandon the lab and live in reclusion in the depths of the forest? Why did she return to that place every morning? A place no one had dared to step foot in for more than 30 years. And why had all records about this land been sealed in the Swedish military archives since 1993? It began in the winter of that year when Elise and her archaeological team were assigned to survey ancient foundations exposed by melting ice in the Torsjö region. Initially, everything followed the routine of any archaeological expedition: mapping, sample analysis, fossil dating. But on the third day, when Elise and her young assistant Lars ventured deeper into the ice, they uncovered a smooth black slab resembling obsidian, about 30 centimeters thick and over 2 meters long, buried beneath 3 layers of ice. Etched onto it were symbols entirely foreign, not belonging to any known script or language within Scandinavia. At first, Elise considered it a rare geological anomaly, but Lars, a man drawn to speculation, began asking disturbing questions. Don't these symbols look like star maps to you? Why is this here, in the middle of nowhere? And why is the ice melting in this exact area despite temperatures staying below zero? Elise dismissed his theories, but then Lars disappeared on the 5th night. He left behind only one charcoal sketch of the slab on paper and a scrawled note. They are not dead. They sleep. Below, no body was found. No calls, no trace, only one certainty. From that moment on, Elise was never the same. For the next 12 years, she was ostracized from the research community for her unverified claims about an ancient race she called the Vandari Giant. Beings possessing technology that transcended time, frozen beneath the earth since the end of what she referred to as the flooding of the sky. No one believed her. Even her husband, a fellow scientist who once shared a national award with her, left. Taking their 2 sons, Elise vanished from public life, retreating into the forest and becoming the self-appointed guardian of a secret no one wished to confront. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Where did the slab come from, and who carved it? Strangely, while all other ice in the region had melted during recent heat waves, the cave where the slab had been found maintained a consistent temperature of 51 degrees Celsius year-round. Elise noticed something odd during her return visits. The ice in the cave did not reflect light like normal ice. Each time she touched the slab, a strange sensation surged through her as if something was listening. One evening, while camping nearby, she discovered a series of carvings on the trunk of a long-dead tree. The marks looked freshly made. They depicted a tall humanoid creature with glowing eyes and arms that touched the ground. Beneath it was a figure resembling Lars, the man who had vanished. A chill ran down her spine. Elise resumed a serious study of the symbols on the slab, using ancient language decoding methods and stellar cartography. What she uncovered, if true, could rewrite human history. According to Elise, the symbols were not letters, but mechanical instructions, schematics for a bioenergetic system. A recurring sequence of shapes formed a structure resembling DNA interaction, eerily similar to how humans discovered gene sequencing. But this was impossible. The slab dated back over 40 years. In the center of the slab, a cluster of symbols arranged in concentric circles resembled a star chart. Elise used astronomical software to reverse calculate the positions of the stars at that time, and found the coordinates only visible from the southern hemisphere more precisely, the area now buried beneath the ice of Antarctica. Wait, was she implying that whoever carved this came from somewhere else, and had once moved between points on Earth, using a system modern science couldn't comprehend? She no longer dared to publish these findings, not after what had happened, but she kept documenting, mapping, and sketching everything by hand. Elise believed the slab was a kind of memory bank, a storage device preserving the knowledge of a lost civilization, a civilization that may have triggered the sudden evolution of humankind like a foreign gene inserted into a base system to activate something. And the strangest part, lately, Elise had recurring dreams, giant, featureless faces, standing still in a fog. In the dream, a voice would whisper, "We are still here. But are you ready to remember? Had Lars never actually died? Was something or someone using Elise as a conduit? The video footage she captured at night, strange sounds, flickering blue lights in the forest, and silhouettes that defied classification, was repeatedly removed from YouTube for alleged community guideline violations. Her digital files were infected with unknown viruses. She resorted to using analog film, the only medium they hadn't yet compromised. The final thing Elise shared in a personal voice recording was, "I don't need to be believed. I just need someone brave enough to look. All the answers are here, right beneath our feet. The real question is, do you have the courage to dig?" And from that day on, Elise disappeared. Her tent in the Torshov forest was found abandoned, filled with sketches, unfinished journals, and one final photo of the slab in which a strange, circular symbol glowed eerily, even though it had been taken with ordinary film. So, was this just fiction or a forgotten warning? What do you think about lost civilizations? Are humans truly the product of pure natural evolution? Or are we the result of some ancient design beyond our current understanding? And if someone or something is waiting to return, are we ready to face them? Some things cannot stay buried beneath the ice forever, for when that silent crust begins to thaw, it's not just the geology that resurfaces, but also the secrets that have slumbered for tens of thousands of years. And Elise's story isn't over, on the contrary. It has only just begun. 3 months after she vanished from the Torshov forest, a government-funded mineral exploration project accidentally exposed a deep fissure hundreds of meters underground. What they found next led authorities to seal off the entire area and classify all information as top secret, but not everything stayed hidden. A file misplaced from military hands ended up with Arvid, a freelance investigative journalist who had followed Elise since her fall from academia. He once interviewed her in a fog-draped cabin in the woods, where he felt something he couldn't name, as if Elise were in contact with a force he couldn't see. When Arvid received the file, the first thing that took his breath away wasn't the coordinates or maps. It was a handwritten note on the first page. "If you're reading this, find me on the 7th level. I am not dead." That handwriting was Elise's. The 7th level of what? A mine, an ancient tunnel, or some other kind of system. Arvid began to trace the coordinates from the file. Coordinates that matched exactly the spot in the Torshov forest Elise once referred to as an ancient energy station. But there was one detail never made public. Beneath the granite layer where the excavation was halted, there was a structure not belonging to natural geology. According to deep geological scans, a dome-like formation made of an unidentified alloy was found, perfectly round, with symmetrically carved grooves, resembling the design of modern jet engines. What shocked analysts the most was this alloy could not be cut, drilled, or melted, even with high-powered lasers. So, who built it, and why? Arvid had no choice left. He decided to break into the restricted area on a midwinter night, when the snow covered all traces and the guards were spread thin across inspection checkpoints along the mining route. In his hands were only a flashlight, a blurred printed map, and the last voice recording Elise had sent to his email before she vanished. Arvid, if you hear a ringing in your ears, don't panic. It's a signal. Don't think, just follow. When you get there, don't look straight into the first light, and don't trust the first voice that calls your name. Sounds crazy, maybe, but deep inside, a man who had chased mysterious disappearances all across Northern Europe. This wasn't the first time he felt that something was watching humanity from the other side of reality. The journey took 7 hours through the forest. He reached the crevice, a deep fracture barely wide enough for a person to slip through. There, something terrifying awaited. The rock walls were engraved with bizarre carvings, depicting a towering humanoid figure with star-shaped eyes, holding luminous cubes. Next to it were people in modern clothing, like himself, but they were bowing. Had others like him come before? Arvid descended deeper. The temperature didn't drop. On the contrary, the deeper he went, the warmer the air became. And then he saw it, a metallic gate of bluish gray, smooth as if freshly polished. Not a single trace of rust, no handle, no hinges. On its surface was a mirrored double helix, resembling DNA, but instead of 2 strands, there were 4. At the center was a strange symbol, like an eye inside a tetrahedral shape, without any physical interaction. The gate opened, soundlessly. Inside was a tunnel lit by soft white light, emitted from a ceiling with no visible source. Arvid could only whisper, "My God, this is real." The tunnel led downward, through 7 levels. On each level, he encountered scenes that shattered every scientific belief he had. Round chambers containing human bodies, perfectly preserved, not decomposing, not withered. Some of them wore modern clothing. One looked exactly like Lars. Could this be the place Elise once spoke of? A biological storage center, or a vault for the genes of the chosen? On the 6th level, he found a chamber glowing faintly, and inside it was Elise. She hadn't aged, not weakened. Still the same Elise as the last time he saw her, except now her eyes were closed, and a stream of glowing blue symbols flowed down her skin. Arvid trembled as he touched the glass, and at that moment, a voice echoed from the system. Awakening 1, activated. Access unlocked. She opened her eyes, but she didn't recognize him. Not fully. "Arvid, you made it here. Excellent. Then, you will be the last." She stepped out of the chamber, but the voice was no longer just Elise's. It resonated, layered, as if emanating from multiple levels of consciousness. Arvid asked rapidly, "What is this? Who are you? Are you still Elise?" She only smiled. "I am Elise, but I am also them." They never left. They merely transitioned into another state, a form of static existence. "And I am the bridge, a bridge to whom?" He shouted. "To all, and now to you." The story ends there, because that was the final segment on Arvid's camera. The camera was found a week later at the Sweden-Finland border checkpoint. No trace of Arvid, no sign of Elise. Only a 3-minute, 44-second video clip remained. In it, Elise stared directly into the camera and said, "The world you know is the result of a single calibration, but not the final one. A new cycle is beginning, and this time, no one gets to choose." The screen went dark. There are moments when history isn't written in ink, but in light, in echoes from unseen underground corridors, and in the sudden disappearance of those who were never meant to know too much. 3 months after Arvid infiltrated the 7th level of the mysterious facility beneath the Torsjö forest, and then vanished without a trace, a letter with no return address was sent to the Nordic Institute of Geophysical Research in Oslo. The letter contained no explanation, no sender, only a single USB device and a handwritten note in ancient French. "Every generation has one who sees. Now, it is your turn." The 7th layer of what? A mine shaft, an ancient tunnel, or some other kind of system. Arvid began to trace the coordinates from the file coordinates that precisely matched the Torsjö forest point. Elise had once referred to as an ancient energy station. But there was a detail never made public. Beneath the granite layer where the excavation had stopped, there was a structure that did not belong to natural geology. According to deep layer imaging, a dome-like formation of unknown alloy lay hidden perfectly round, with symmetrical grooves, reminiscent of modern jet engine schematics. What shocked analysts the most was that the alloy could not be cut, drilled, or melted, not even with high-powered lasers. So, who built it, and why? Arvid had no choice. He decided to break into the restricted area on a midwinter night, when snow covered all traces and guards were dispersed across checkpoint lines. All he had was a flashlight, a faded map, and the final voice recording Elise had sent to his inbox before she vanished. Arvid, if you hear ringing in your ears, don't panic. It's a signal. Don't think. Just follow it. When you arrive, don't look straight at the first light, and don't trust the first voice that says your name. Crazy, perhaps, but in his gut, as someone who'd chased strange disappearances across northern Europe, this wasn't the first time he felt something watching humanity from the other side of reality. The trek took 7 hours through the forest. He reached the fissure, a deep fracture in the earth, just wide enough for one person to slip through. And there, something terrifying waited. The inner rock walls were covered in strange carvings, depicting a towering creature with star-shaped eyes holding glowing cube-like objects. Beside this being were humans, dressed in modern clothing, just like him, but they bowed. Had others like him come before? Arvid continued his descent. The deeper he went, the warmer the air became. Then he saw it, a metallic door, gray-blue in color, smooth like polished steel, no rust, no handle, no hinges. On its surface was a double spiral resembling DNA, but with 4 strands instead of 2. And at the center, an odd symbol, like an eye within a tetrahedral frame. No touch was needed. The door slid open silently. Inside was a corridor with pale white light emitting from a ceiling with no visible source. Arvid could only whisper, "My God, this is real." The tunnel led downward, through 7 layers. At each level, he encountered sights that shattered his scientific worldview. Circular chambers holding preserved human bodies, no decay, no deterioration. Some wore modern clothes one looked exactly like Lars. Could this be the place Elise once mentioned? A biological archive or a storage facility for selected genetic profiles. At the 6th level, he found one chamber still glowing, and inside it was Elise. She hadn't aged. She wasn't frail. She was exactly as he remembered her the last day they met, except her eyes were closed, and blue symbols streamed slowly across her skin. Arvid trembled as he touched the glass, and at that instant, a voice echoed from the system. Awakening 1, activation, access unlocked. She opened her eyes, but she didn't fully recognize him. "Arvid, you made it here. Wonderful, then you'll be the last one." She stepped out of the chamber, but her voice wasn't quite hers. It echoed from multiple layers of consciousness. Arvid pressed, "What is this? Who are you? Are you still Elise?" She merely smiled. "I am Elise, but I am also them. They never left. They only transitioned into another state, and I am the connecting entity." "Connected to whom?" he shouted. "To all, and now, to you." The story ends there. That was the last footage recovered from Arvid's camera. It was found a week later at a Swedish-Finnish border checkpoint. There was no sign of Arvid, no trace of Elise, only a video, 3 minutes and 44 seconds long. In it, Elise stares directly into the camera and says, "The world you know is the result of a prior calibration, but not the last one. A new cycle is beginning, and this time, no one gets chosen." The screen went black. There are moments in history, not written in ink, but in light, in echoes from unseen underground corridors, and in the sudden disappearance of those who should never have known too much. 3 months after Arvid broke into the 7th layer beneath Torsjö Forest and vanished without a trace, A letter without a name arrived at the Nordic Institute of Geophysical Research in Oslo. Inside, no explanation, no sender, just a USB drive and a handwritten line in Old French. Every generation has one who sees. Now it's your turn. Inside the USB were short video clips, some capturing blurry footage of Arvid, others stranger, appearing to be filmed from a perspective not human. One clip began with Elise sitting in a metallic chamber, eyes locked on the camera. Or rather, the viewer. She spoke slowly. Clearly, if you're watching this, it means the third lock has been broken. They've returned to the first layer, and there isn't much time left. First layer, broken locks. Who is returning? At the Oslo Institute. The first to view the footage was a young physicist named Lena Ahlström, who had studied the strange magnetic phenomena in the Torsjö region, phenomena still lacking scientific explanation. She was the one who discovered a recurring radio interference pattern from the area every 26 days, mimicking a satellite pulse but matching no known satellite. She had dismissed it as a technical anomaly, but when aligned with the date, Elise and Arvid disappeared. The cycle was off by exactly one phase. Could this area be a transmission point? Or worse, a kind of receiver? Lena extracted the USB's data and found a hidden file encoded in a unique binary sequence. Once decrypted, it revealed coordinates, an energy graph, and one question on the screen. Have you ever dreamed of the 8th layer? The 8th. Wasn't the underground complex only supposed to have 7? But the deeper Lena went, the more what unfolded wasn't science. It was a kind of ancient technological language, where knowledge and instinct, data and intuition fused into one, in one encoded diagram. The spirals reappeared, but they rotated slowly, simulating a biological cycle, and in one static video frame. She clearly saw a face, not Elise, not Arvid, but something human-like, and not human at all. A forehead nearly reaching the skull's peak, eyes deep like black holes, pale greenish-blue skin, and a halo of light circling the head like a biological crown. Lena's heart pounded. This was no longer hypothesis, no longer a symbol. This was an existential signal. She quietly left the institute to visit the last person known to have spoken with Elise, Johannes Berglund, a reclusive linguist near Sweden's border, known for his research into pre-language Proto-Sumerian symbols and their ties to DNA signatures. When Lena showed him the 4-strand spiral symbol from the video, Johannes turned pale. He led her into a room filled with hundreds of symbol copies from unpublished cave sites, Siberia, South Africa, the Andes. He pointed to 3 carvings across 3 continents. 3 isolated cultures with the same repeating pattern. A circle intersected by 4 points, surrounded by 6 evenly spaced branches. See it? He asked. They didn't just come once. Then he recounted. I once read an ancient manuscript, banned by the Vatican as unfit for study. It described a medieval monk's dream where beings from star realms commanded him to write the first language one without sound, only shape, light, and intent. That monk died in church prison, but I have a copy of the manuscript. Lena read it. One passage haunted her. When the 8th layer opens, the blood of stars shall merge with the soil, but not all doors open to those with eyes. Only those who dare to look without fear shall be chosen. And at the bottom, in trembling script, I saw my own face reflected in their eyes. 3 days later, Lena returned to Torsjö alone. This time, the ice had melted, but not from climate change. The forest was now a void of energy. No birdsong, no insects. Cracked earth, as if gently shaken by unseen tremors. But in the dead center stood a new metallic structure never documented before. It did not match the stratigraphy. It had risen, as if pulled from beneath the earth by something not of this world. A helical tower, about 15 meters high, emitted low-frequency sounds like a heartbeat. And Lena, almost entranced, walked in. No doors, no walls, just light. She lost sense of time, of weight. Only thought remained. if it even was hers. A voice or sensation echoed in her mind. You have heard, you have seen. Now you will remember, when Lena awoke, she was in a hospital room in Kiruna. No one knew where she'd come from. No ID, no papers. But what shocked doctors was this. Her brain showed minor structural changes, an unusually active language center, and she could speak. A language no one had heard before, but that others could understand. She was no longer Lena, or more precisely, she was both Lena and something else speaking through her. And that is where the story becomes most obscure. Because every record of Lena after that moment vanished from medical systems. No one ever saw her again. No surveillance camera recorded her leaving the hospital. But 3 weeks later, at a scientific conference in Geneva, a strange woman stepped onto the stage during a mid-session discussion. She gave no introduction, simply opened her laptop and projected a single image onto the screen, a human genome map, but with a fourth strand. And she said, when the 8th layer opens, humanity will no longer need to ask where it came from. It must ask, are we worthy of what is about to be returned? Then she stepped down. No one knew where she had come from. But from that day on, research gene servers worldwide were hacked, all leaving behind a single question. Have you seen yourself? And deep within a sealed room beneath the Institute for Ancient Genetics in Zurich, where every system is lined with lead to prevent signal leaks, a group of experts were watching the footage extracted from the Geneva conference. The woman who stepped on stage had no ID, no name, no traceable DNA profile, yet she presented an entirely new genetic sequence. The mind-bending part, it matched an encrypted DNA segment, once found in prehistoric mummies from Peru, Mongolia, and Egypt, consistently dismissed for not fitting any known evolutionary tree. She claimed her name was Lena, but the experts knew well. Lena had disappeared from Kiruna Hospital 27 days earlier, after being recorded with abnormal brainwave activity and the ability to speak an unrecognized language. One of those experts was Dr. Andre Keller, a leading researcher on silent DNA, the 98% of the genome that doesn't code for proteins. When he compared Lena's sequence to those ancient samples, he was stunned. The double helix expanded into a quadruple spiral, with light locks at the non-coding regions, as if DNA was not merely biology, but a multi-layered communication system, a kind of genetic operating system. But what haunted Andre most wasn't the sequence itself. It was a tiny symbol embedded at the very end of the code, 3 dots arranged in an inverted triangle. In all his 18 years of research, he had only seen this symbol once, etched into the inside of a black stone slab found in the Altai region, Russia, just before the archaeological team was shut down by federal authorities. He remembered because he had sketched it by hand before all data was wiped clean. 3 dots, inverted triangle, also known as the mark of the final opening in myths about the Vandari civilization. Ancient accounts claim that when this symbol reappears, the 8th layer would no longer be the end point, but the junction. A junction to what? No one knew. Hokui. That night, Andre didn't sleep. He extracted Lena's sequence and ran it through a neural simulation designed to model how the human brain responds to certain frequency fields. And then, the impossible happened. The system recorded spontaneous low-frequency beta waves, as if the brain was reacting to an invisible signal emitted by the gene sequence itself. The DNA was speaking. He stepped back, chills running down his spine. In that moment, he felt something was watching him from within himself. Ooh. The next day, Andre left. He traveled to the Altai region, back to the site where the slab had once been uncovered, now fenced off by Russian military with barbed wire. But Andre didn't come alone. He brought Lena's genetic code with him, hoping to find a connection between this new genetic material and remnants of the ones who came before. In a small village near the Kazakhstan border, he sought out an elderly woman named Sura, known locally as the Keeper of Fire. She was blind, but her eyes gleamed, as if reflecting sunlight. Before Andre could speak, she said, "You carry the voice of the eighth wind, and the blood in you is trembling." Andre froze. No one knew what he carried. No one was told anything. Yet this old woman, who had never left the village, seemed to have been waiting for him. Sura led him into a cavern beneath the stone layers, saying it was where the ones of sound used to sleep within the walls. There, Andre saw the most bewildering engravings, humanoid figures with 6 glowing protrusions on their heads, holding oval-shaped devices surrounded by interwoven bands of light, like neural threads. And at the center, the 3-dot inverted triangle, now accompanied by repeating glyphs, belonging to no known alphabet, but bearing uncanny resemblance to protein encoding sequences in DNA. Could this be a biological writing system? Outside the cave, night fell like a collapsing curtain. Thunder cracked despite cloudless skies. Andre began to copy the entire symbol system. While translating a particular sequence, he discovered something that stopped his breath, a nearly identical fragment to Lina's genetic code, specifically the 4th helix lock, an impossibility unless it had been preserved across millennia. But just as he prepared to transmit the data back to Zurich, all his devices simultaneously shut down. No power, no signal, no light, only a voice or a whisper from deep within the cave. Not all who see are chosen. Not all who are chosen are kept. Andre was found 3 days later, unconscious at the edge of the village, in his hands, a cloth-wrapped bundle, inside, a blood-drawn copy of the cave symbols. But his memory had been almost completely wiped. No one could explain how he survived 72 hours in 20 degrees Celsius without dehydration or hypothermia. And what shook the entire research institute was this. A blood test revealed an unknown genetic sequence, labeled D4V8, one embedded in his white blood cells. It was Lina's sequence. Could it be that, in that cave, a form of genetic information was transferred into him in a way we've never understood? And if so, does Andre now carry within him a part of the 8th layer? At this point, the entire formal research system was forced to initiate an interagency investigation. The governments of Switzerland, Sweden, Russia, and several G7 countries quietly established a specialized unit with the codename Genesis 8, tasked with decoding the potential existence of a non-human genetic sequence. But what frightened everyone most was a hypothesis included in an internal report. The D4V8-1 sequence is not merely a biological code. It has the ability to self-activate under certain resonant environments. And when activated, it alters the structure of human behavior, language, and perception. If Lina, Andre, and before them Elise, Arvid, are all carriers, then what happens when the number of awakened seeds exceeds a certain threshold? Could it be that a form of collective consciousness not of this species is being reactivated? Could what's returning not be them, but us, in a version we once were? But that has been locked away long ago. Russ, have you ever felt like you don't belong here? Have you ever dreamed of symbols you couldn't trace back to any origin? Have you ever stood in a crowd and suddenly a thought echoed, "This isn't all there is"? If so, don't dismiss it too quickly. Maybe you've been code-touched too. After Arvid vanished beneath the ground in Torsho, no one spoke of him again, as if he never existed. Newspapers, articles, social media accounts, all scrubbed clean, except one place, an old blog post of his, preserved by a web archive tool, titled simply, "The 7th layer is a mirror." The post had no detailed content, just 3 strange code segments, a blurred image of Elise turning her face back, and one final line that sends chills down anyone's spine. "If I don't return, don't come looking for me, but if you hear the calling, listen with your heartbeat." 3 months later, in Berlin, in a dusty attic apartment in Kreuzberg, A young man named Mathis Lehner accidentally stumbled upon that post while researching for his thesis in ancient history. He didn't know who Elise was, had never heard of Arvid, but something kept him glued to the screen. The photo of Elise in that post was the same face he had been dreaming about since he was 12. It couldn't be coincidence. In those dreams, Elise always stood in a gray room, surrounded by glowing circles, always repeating a single sentence in a language he didn't understand, but somehow deeply knew. Once, she even called him the incomplete one. Mathis became obsessed. He joined esoteric research forums, combed through Humboldt Library archives, searched keywords like seventh layer, quad helix DNA, biological transfer gateways, and especially the name Elas. After weeks of nothing, he found something odd. The name Elise Engström did appear in archived files of missing researchers from the previous decade, tagged with the warning avoid contact, unstable psychological state. But the offline backup of that file had a hidden section. When Mathis decoded it, a line appeared, selected as observational subject phase 1. Process halted after specimen could not be fully partitioned. Partitioned from what? The deeper Mathis read, the more he felt drawn in, not intellectually, but biologically. One night, while zooming in on Eliza's photo, he ran it through a clarity filter and found a tiny symbol in the bottom right corner. 3 dots, arranged in an inverted triangle. He'd seen that symbol before, but where? On a strange birthmark on his own left wrist. Since birth, Mathis set off for Sweden. No plan, no contacts, only a gut feeling, and the dreams, becoming clearer every night. In them, Elise no longer turned away. She now faced him, no longer speaking in unknown tongues, but in German. And she said, "I'm no longer me, Mathis, and I'm not the last one." That night, deep in the Torsio forest, Mathis followed the coordinates Arvid had once marked. Nothing, just a frozen clearing. But as he stood still and closed his eyes, a faint sound pulsed, like a heartbeat. And when he opened them again, the ground before him had split open, revealing a passageway leading down. No light, but Mathis could see. It felt like he'd been here before. The deeper he went, the more Mathis felt something strange. Every event in his life seemed to have been calculated to bring him here. Even the tragedies, the failures, the nameless obsession with feeling out of place. At the very end of the corridor, he met a child, a little girl, around 9 years old, with platinum white hair and completely black eyes, though not frightening. She stood in the center of a glowing circle and spoke with Elise's voice. Each cycle requires 1 to unlock, 1 to preserve, and 1 to activate. You are the last. Who? Mathis stepped back, his voice trembling. You. The wall behind the girl opened. Inside was a massive spherical chamber filled with light cocoons, each one holding a sleeping human, perfectly motionless. Mathis looked closer and recognized Arvid. And Elise? The girl approached, placed her hand on Mathis's wrist. The birthmark burned hot. They came before. But you will be the last to leave. If you agree, leave. To where? Outside the cycle. Mathis stood at the edge of something never named. Part of him wanted to run. Another part, deeper, instinctual, whispered, "It's time." And then he nodded. Elise's cocoon opened. She sat up, looked straight at Mathis. "I've been waiting for you across 7 layers. The final footage ever captured by the Torsio Meteorological Research Station showed a radiant double helix beam rising from the ground, lasting exactly 3 minutes and 44 seconds before all power across northern Sweden went out for exactly 19 minutes. When the electricity returned, there was no one left in the forest. No Elise, no Mathis, no trace of anything. Only one thing remained. On the ground, where the light had emerged, a massive symbol made of snow and ice, 3 dots in an inverted triangle. If one day you wake up and feel that your life doesn't truly belong to you, ask yourself what was locked inside you, and more importantly, who's been holding the key all this time, 7 days after the light event at Torsjö and the mysterious disappearance of Matthis. An international research group was hastily assembled under the pretext of extreme climate response. But in reality, it was the special unit Genesis 8, the same group that had once tried to decode the D4V8, one sequence, after the cases of Elise and André. This time, the group was led by Dr. Lucien Greve, an expert in genetic memory and the application of resonant frequencies to cerebral awakening models. But Lucien was not entirely a stranger to the story. 3 years earlier, he was the one who had rejected Elise's proposal at the Scientific Ethics Board, dismissing it as mystical in nature, unsupported by data. He had thought it was merely a mild psychotic episode in the mind of a genius, until he saw the final recording of Elise in the cocoon chamber, where she awoke and looked directly into the camera. "I am no longer me. I am the stored part. And you, Lucien, will be the activated part." She said his name 3 years ago. And back then, he had known nothing about Torsjö. Back in the present, Lucien and his team arrived at the forest zone, which had been completely sealed off. All living creatures within a 3-kilometer radius were gone. No birds, no insects. Beneath the soil where the light had emerged, they discovered a form of bioluminescent crystal never before catalogued, exhibiting spiral light emissions and producing ultra-low frequency oscillations equivalent to REM brain waves during deep sleep. But when the sample was fed into the resonance analyzer, the screen displayed a faint sound signal, like the murmur of an ancient melody. A melody strangely familiar. Lucien froze. It was the lullaby his mother used to hum to him as a child, an old tune from Lorraine that had long vanished, its lyrics forgotten. How could stone emit a rhythm from personal memory? One night afterward, alone in the command tent, Lucien was awakened by the sound of rain, though there was no rain. Instead, a soft blue light drifted like vapor through the forest. He followed the light, walking deeper until he stood before a fissure, unlike the corridors Arvid or Matthis had passed through, but rather a form of biological architecture, with walls that appeared to be breathing. And inside that living fissure, he saw himself, not a reflection, not an illusion. It was a person with Lucien's exact face, standing motionless, eyes closed, wrapped in a cocoon of soft silver light. A voice echoed, not from someone, but from within his own mind. "This is the original archive. You are the operational replica." Lucien screamed until his throat burned, but nothing changed. And then Elise stepped out from the shadows. She had not aged, had not changed. She simply placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "You thought you were a scientist, but you've always been test data. What you call a life is merely a variant of the root sequence, and you've just been summoned. Summoned for what? To open the 9th layer. The 9th layer. No one had ever mentioned it. All documents spoke of 7 layers. 8, at most, if counting the symbolic tier. So what was the 9th? Elise led Lucien deeper into the stone. No artificial lights remained, only a gentle glow, like memory, like dreams from childhood. And then they reached a place that words could not describe. A lattice-like space where strands of light intersected, forming countless human-like figures suspended in a state of non-being. Not alive, not dead. Elise spoke. "This is the Interlink archive." "Whose?" Lucien asked. "Of those who rewrote humanity." She told him, millions of years ago, a species known as the Vandari once existed. They did not live through cells like us, but through biospiral fields, where information, emotion, and will were encoded as light when they arrived on Earth. They did not conquer. They integrated by planting memory seed codes into the native biological DNA. Since then, humans were not merely organisms, but living devices in which ancient memories could be recalled when the time came. Those carrying the awakening triggers would find each other and initiate the relink cycle. And the 9th layer was where the entire source code of this script was kept. Lucien didn't believe it, but he recalled the inexplicable things, why he had never truly felt present in reality, why his childhood memories were always hazy, as though pieced together, and why, in every dream, he always saw himself standing in a white room, beside himself. Elise said only one final sentence. If you want to end it, ascend to the 9th. But if you want to understand, wait for the 10th, and then everything vanished. Lucien awoke at the checkpoint, found by the research team unconscious, dehydrated and hypoglycemic. Clutched in his hand was a strange object, a shard of luminous crystal containing a DNA strand that matched no known Earth species. Stranger still, it matched a dormant segment in Lucien's own brain, a segment that never coded anything, but always lit up when he dreamed. This time, he didn't report it, didn't log it. He handwrote everything and hid it inside a small metal box, buried beneath the old oak tree in Torshu. On the lid of the box, he carved only one line. If you ever see yourself in someone else's dream, don't panic. You're being called, and you. Have you ever felt like your dreams weren't truly yours, but from someone else, someone whispering to return? If so, perhaps you, too, are very close to the 9th layer. Lucien Grieve was no longer a scientist. Since the night he entered the Interlink archive in the 9th layer and faced himself, or rather, a version of himself, his entire worldview began to unravel. Science, once his ultimate foundation of truth, now felt like a mere interface, hiding a deeper operating system, invisible, sentient, and aware that he was observing it. For 6 weeks after waking at Torshu, Lucien shared nothing with Genesis 8. He claimed temporary neural fatigue, requested leave, and retreated to a cabin in Norway. No phone, no Wi-Fi, no interruptions. But he was not alone. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he began hearing a sound, unclear, wordless, just a sequence of vibrations, seemingly outside the range of human hearing. The most unsettling part, the sound wasn't external. It came from within, from the memory region between his brain's temporal lobes, and it kept asking him one question. Are you ready to understand? One midwinter night, snow blanketing the roof, Lucien dreamt of falling freely through darkness. But he wasn't falling downward. He was falling upward. Earth below shrank into a model, and atop the model Earth sat a ring of light. Within it, countless concentric layers. When he reached the outermost ring, a symbol appeared, a spiraling eye, inside which 3 points of light rotated counter to each other. At that moment, he woke, but strangely, on his chest, right above his heart, appeared a faint glowing mark in the exact shape of the dream symbol. No pain, no heat, but a sensation as if a gate had just been opened. Lucien began redrawing the symbol, and he realized it matched exactly with an engraving on the rock wall of the 3rd layer that Arvid had once described in his now lost voice recording. A symbol once deemed uninterpretable, but according to ancient notes, it was the eye of the 10th layer. No one had ever reached the 10th layer. Elise had opened the 7th. Mathis activated the 8th. Lucien himself had been code-touched at the 9th. But the 10th, there were no descriptions. No maps, no data. Only a single line found in an ancient Ugaritic text carved into ivory. He who steps into the 10th layer is no longer human. But he who does not step is no longer himself. So where is the choice? Lucien decided to return to Zurich. He went to the National Library, requesting access to the classified archive of recurring dream records from psychiatric patients between 1943 and 1991. What he found left him frozen for hours. 48 people from different countries, strangers to each other, describing the exact same dream image. A suspended door, slowly rotating, and a voice from within that used no words. but was understood by all, and all 48 people vanished without a trace after experiencing that dream a third time. Lucien immediately checked his own dream record, and as the pattern suggested, he had dreamed it twice. Would the third time be tonight? Exactly at midnight, he connected a neural wave measuring device, streaming real-time data to a secondary unit located 500 meters away. In case his body underwent physical transformation, he closed his eyes, slipped into that state between waking and sleep. This time, he wasn't falling. He was floating, drifting through a zone of muted light, where every memory he had forgotten, rejected, or distorted out of fear, surfaced, and then he stopped before a luminous sphere. The 10th layer. No one spoke, no sound, no instruction, only a feeling that he had to do something deeply personal, and yet connected to the whole. He stepped in. When he woke up, the monitoring equipment in the cabin detected a form of high-frequency gamma wave never before recorded in the human brain. Not a dream state, not wakefulness, not coma, but a form of open-tier consciousness linking, which occurs only when a personal consciousness crosses the boundary of self and connects into a larger cognitive network. Lucien was no longer entirely Lucien. From that moment, he began to write, not by hand, but with his eyes, using a special eye-tracking keyboard capable of measuring precise pupil movements. The content he wrote became known as the reverse script, a sequence of symbols combining molecular biology, ancient languages, logic structures, and light-wave rhythms. And when the Genesis 8 team decoded portions of it, they discovered something unbelievable. The reverse script described in perfect detail every event of the past 14 years, from Elise, Arvid, to Mathis, yet it had been written before any of it occurred. Could it be that Lucien had linked into a reversed timeline, where the present is merely a temporary echo of a past that was once inscribed as concept? And the last line he wrote, before falling into permanent silence, was, "The next will be one who believes in nothing, for only he who believes in nothing is empty enough to be overwritten." Are you that person? Have you ever denied all the strange things around you, only to one day wake up and feel rebooted? If you've ever asked yourself, who am I, if not the sum of all memories I've ever recalled, then maybe you too have seen the door to the 10th layer. Have you ever woken up and felt you no longer truly belong? Not because someone left you, or because your job collapsed, or due to some invisible loneliness, but simply because everything around you feels too perfect, too smooth, too well sequenced, to the point where you ask yourself, is this still the real world? Hanno Mayer was not a scientist, nor a conspiracy theorist. He was an ordinary AI programmer, 32 years old, working at a startup on cognitive simulation in Dresden. A man who never believed in the supernatural, let alone in anything like the 10th level of consciousness, until the nameless package appeared at his doorstep one March morning, the weather of which no one could quite recall. No sender, no return address, just a thin silver envelope, almost like parchment, containing a single piece of paper, not printed, not written, but engraved, with a type of light ink that only appeared when tilted exactly 46 degrees. Open your eyes. The third time will be tonight. Hanno scoffed. A prank. Surely. But when he folded the paper back, a strange sensation rippled down his spine. Cold, like a current, running through his nervous system. And what wiped the smile from his face was this. The line began fading, as if it knew the exact moment he had finished reading it. He threw it in the trash, but that night, he dreamed. For the first time, in the dream, he saw himself sitting in a room without walls, undefined, but not empty. There was sound, but no source, and in front of him, floating in the void, was a slowly rotating door, circular, glowing faintly gold, marked with a symbol, 3 glowing points orbiting counter to one another. When he reached out to touch it, A voice spoke, not with sound, but with sensation. No one is ready, but everyone must choose. Hanno jolted awake, his shirt soaked with sweat, and the first thing he did was search for that symbol. He didn't know why, he just knew he had to. The first result led him to an old scientific article, published in 2009, written by someone named Lucien Grave, a name he had never heard. The article discussed the correlation between semi-conscious states and access to deeper cognitive layers. Digging deeper, he discovered Lucien had disappeared 9 months ago, or more precisely, he had ceased physical interaction with the world. This strange phrasing appeared only in internal reports from the Genesis 8 group, documents leaked in a data breach that no major outlet ever officially reported. Hanno suddenly felt like he was being drawn into a game. Yet strangely, this game had no beginning. He decided to seek out a man named Mathis Søren, a former collaborator of Lucien and the last person officially recorded as having accessed the 8th layer. Mathis lived in seclusion in Switzerland, in a wooden house nestled against a cliff, with no cameras, no GPS. When Hanno knocked, Mathis wasn't surprised. "You've had the first dream, and 2 more to go, right?" Hanno replied. Mathis didn't answer. He silently pointed to the wall, where a hand-drawn paper map showed 10 concentric circles. Lucien thought the 10th layer was the end, but he was wrong. Wrong. There's an 11th layer, but it's not within the circle structure. It's outside the boundary, a broken line. Hanno looked closer, indeed, at the very bottom of the map. A faint dashed line extended from the 10th circle toward a symbol with no defined shape, just a gray zone with a single word. "Rewrite. Rewrite," Hanno asked. "No," Mathis corrected. "Overwrite." That night, Hanno left without a word. He returned to his rented room, opened his laptop, and attempted to access the Genesis 8 data files that had been wiped from the web. And strangely, without hacking or tricks, a file appeared as if it had been waiting. File num, rewrite, or the contents were nothing but a wave pattern, a code of binary signals interwoven with frequency oscillations, something only a deep learning AI could decode. He uploaded it into the sleep simulation software he had been developing, a tool never fully completed. Immediately, there was no loading screen, but his webcam turned on automatically. The angle only showed an eye. Whose eye? He didn't know. Just a dilated pupil, then a contraction, and a single blink, like a signal. And so the second night began. This time, no floating room, but a city. No people, no cars, only replicas of memories. A childhood park he once visited, the corner store his grandmother took him to, the street where he first fell off his bike. They repeated, they looped, as if the system was scanning the integrity of his memories before deletion. The dream ended with a sentence. On the 3rd night, you will choose, reset or accept the error. The next morning, his phone no longer worked. The screen froze on a single logo, a circle with 3 glowing points. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he found himself standing in a place beyond description. Not a city, not a forest, not a simulation, but a between place, call it the 11th layer, and there stood Lucien. No, not Lucien, a copy, or more precisely, a concept of Lucien, being transmitted through space as a stream of data. "Welcome," he said. "You don't need to believe in anything. That's why you were chosen." Chosen for what? To overwrite. But overwrite who? Lucien did not answer. Instead, before Hanno appeared countless mirrors, each reflecting a different version of himself. One happier, one angrier, one more idealistic, one more broken. All of them were him or had been. "You have to erase them all," Lucien said. "Why? Because this world doesn't need a duplicated ego. It needs a void, a foundation, someone who brings nothing along. And after that," Lucien simply said, "after that, the system will choose a new reality." When Hanno woke up, his computer displayed a window, Rewrite completed. Identity null. Timeline reset. And he no longer remembered who he was. All he knew was, every morning, when he opened his eyes, he heard a sentence echo from somewhere deep in his memory, as if left behind from another layer. The one who believes in nothing is the only one not bound by anything. Are you that person? No one knows what happened to Hanno Mayer after that. No death certificate, no missing persons report, no journal, no data from cameras, cloud storage, or personal devices. All that remained was a single line, printed from an old printer at the Genesis 8 data center, exactly at 3, an hour when no one was on duty. The line read, "Empty version has been overwritten. Redundant memory eliminated. Layer 11 is now reconfiguring." No one signed it. No one claimed it. Only one person read it, Elise, who once opened Layer 7. She was old, her eyes dimmed with time, but still clear enough to recognize the final signature beneath the notice. Not a name, not a symbol, but a string of numbers. Her birthday, 1974, 15. How? Elise left the office that night without speaking to anyone, and no one ever saw her again. Only one person, a young girl, later found the chair Elise used to sit in, out on the lawn in front of the research building, with a small piece of paper pinned to it, with a wooden tack. The paper was yellowed, old, and the handwriting slanted and faint, containing just one sentence. Some questions aren't made to be answered. They exist to keep the system from collapsing. 2 months later, in a medical records room in Stockholm, a psychiatrist was reviewing the sleep data of an 8-year-old girl who suffered from sleep-talking episodes. The child had remained silent for the first 5 nights, but on the 6th night, the EEG recorded a series of unusually high gamma waves, unlike any known pattern of brain activity. And right after that, the girl sat upright in her sleep, eyes wide open but not seeing. A nurse approached, and the girl suddenly reached out and drew on the table a spiral shape, 3 glowing points rotating counterclockwise. Everyone froze. The girl smiled. "I'm in now. Who are you?" The girl only looked toward the window where no one stood and whispered, "The one who believes in nothing." He cleared the space for me. From that moment on, similar signals began appearing across the world, but without any discernible pattern. A monk in Peru began drawing the circular symbol during meditation. An elderly woman in Osaka suffering from advanced Alzheimer's suddenly repeated a string of nonsensical characters that matched 98% of the reverse script. A miner in Namibia claimed he saw a drifting door after falling unconscious during a mine collapse. But every time researchers attempted to systematize it all, everything vanished. Corrupted data, blank files, people missing, malfunctioning instruments, as if the system knew it was being watched. And then, on an undetermined day, because every clock stopped at that exact moment, a voice resonated from every remaining analog radio device across the world. Not a human voice, not a machine voice, but a kind of vibration that made the listener feel like they were remembering something they'd never known. We are not above, nor are we below. We are in the space between where belief dissolves and truth has not yet arrived. You are hearing this because you have not yet been defined. And if you still doubt everything you just heard, then congratulations. You still have the chance to choose. 1 week later, a newborn was delivered in Prague. Nothing unusual except its eyes were open the moment it left the womb. No crying, no movement, just staring upward at the ceiling. The doctor looked puzzled. "Not normal," he said, but the mother, a nameless programmer, only smiled gently. "The baby is just checking the system. Are you sure you haven't seen that dream? The door that doesn't touch the ground. The 3 counter-rotating lights. No words, just a feeling. Choose. And if tonight, as you lie down, you notice every sound syncing perfectly, no stutter, no glitch, no static, then try looking up at your ceiling. You might see a faint circle, as if a passage is waiting. But don't touch it if you still believe everything happening is real. Because once you step in, you will no longer be yourself. Or maybe you'll have just returned to who you truly were. Can you still hear it? Or has the system already begun rewriting you from the moment you read the first line?